Welcome to the podcast about venture capital, where investors and founders alike can learn how VCs make decisions and reach conviction. Your host is Nick Moran, and this is The Full Ratchet.
Mar Hershenson joins us today from Menlo Park. She is founding managing partner at Pear VC, an early-stage venture fund investing in consumer, SaaS, healthcare, Web3, enterprise, and more. Mara has a PhD in electrical engineering from Stanford, which she then used to develop a groundbreaking technique for optimizing the design of analog semiconductors. Mara went on to co-found 3 startups and has registered 14 patents. She later founded Pear VC in 2013, where she has invested in companies including DoorDash, Guardant Health, Branch Metrics, Aurora Solar, and Nobel Foods. Mara has also been named to the Forbes 2019 and 2022 Midas list. Mara, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Nick. Excited to be here.
It's such a pleasure to finally meet you. I've been admiring from afar for a long time. For the audience's sake, can you give us a bit more on your background and your path to venture?
Yes, my path to venture is through my history as an entrepreneur. I started Pear in 2013 with my partner Pejman, and Pejman had been a prior investor in one of my companies. So as you mentioned, Nick, after I finished my PhD, I went off and I started my first company based on my PhD research. My first company didn't work out, but that's where I learned the most. And then I did 2 companies that did well. Pejman was lucky enough to back me on my second company. And in 2009, he approached me about starting a venture fund. He wanted to have a house in Palo Alto, fill it up with people, serve them tea, and figure out who he should back. And at first, when he told me his idea, I thought he was completely crazy. I said, "You are insane. I have never invested, and this house idea seems crazy." So for several years, he pursued me about this house. And I kept saying no. Ultimately, he changed strategy. So he said, well, let's just do some angel investing. So in early 2013, we started meeting founders on Coupa Cafe on Ramona Street in Palo Alto, which is the original Coupa. I used to go like an hour every week. And it quickly turned out of me being there from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day, which is a really good way to meet founders. So ultimately, I think in May, I said, okay, fine, you win. You can go raise this fund. At the time, it seemed like seed was really busy. There were maybe 100 firms, and we thought it was, oh my gosh, it's so crazy to raise another seed fund. But we went for it. First thing, I neither him nor I had been in venture involved in raising a fund. So the first thing I did was go online to Amazon and type how to raise a venture fund. There is a book you can actually get. So at least I was able to learn the lingo. And then finally, through basically friends and networks, we learned how to do it, and we raised Pear 1, which was a $50 million fund. So that's the brief story.
Amazing. And now you're on Fund 4, is it?
Yes.
Fund 3 was what size?
Fund 3 was $160 million.
$160 million. And Mara, what is the thesis at Pear?
Pejman had been an angel investor prior to starting Pear, and he really wanted to create a fund so he could basically help founders on a more hands-on way. I had been a founder, and when I started in 99, I was a recent PhD grad, a female founder, which was really, really rare. At the time, what people did when you had a founder that looked like me was, let's bring a CEO. That was the thing to do. Part of the reason I finally decided to go to Pear was to offer a place where the Mar of 1999 would get the support that she needed to be the best CEO she can be, right? And I think that's what we do at Pear. We really try to back the best, highest potential people we can and surround them by help and support so they can reach their full potential. That's Pear. So we're not thesis driven. We're not research driven. We really are people driven, which I think at Seed is probably a really good strategy.
What else sets Pear apart from the other early stage firms?
At the Seed, there's so many seed offerings. And I think obviously everybody has a lot to offer. Most of us in the investment team are founders and operators. So a lot of what differentiates us is really being very, very hands-on with those founders. We've built a platform team, which is kind of rare for a seed fund. We are 20 people. You can do the math, but that doesn't leave much room. We decided let's just build something that is going to be here for a long time. That's one of our core values. Let's long-term thinking. So we've invested a lot of our management fees on building an amazing team. First, we brought in Matt Beerbaum, who used to run recruiting, be the head of global talent at Instacart. We have 3 recruiters under him. And any company we back will bring the first couple of people, for some of them more than the first couple. We did that in a very analytical way. This is the way a lot of us are engineers. We do it. We surveyed our founders. What do you guys need? And 110% of them, I say 110 because many people added this twice. They said recruiting. So we said, okay, let's build the best recruiting solution we can, right? So that's one. The second thing we're building is a go-to-market team. Companies, founders at our stage, they need strategic help, product help, which comes from the partners, recruiting, which is very tactical, but critical to the success of the company. Customers, as you know, once you build a product, you want to sell it, or growth help, and then, help for the next financing. So we're very focused on that. Our philosophy is I think of Pear as a product. If you're a founder and you take money from Pear, you should get the best product to get you to that Series A. And how do we deliver that product is we are kind of these 4 prongs and building around that, basically.
Amazing. Mar, how do you keep those value-added services fresh, right? We've seen some larger platforms launch a variety of different value-added services for startups. And often the feedback we hear is the first generation is amazing. And then it tails off over time and starts to lose some of its sizzle and some of its value and gets washed out. How do you keep this value center instead of a cost center?
Well, I would say that the culture at Pear is first very collaborative. So we're not, even within a company, many of us will touch the company, many of the investment partners, and many of the platform people. So it's not that I just hand them off to somebody. We work together on working with the company. And it is the job of any investment partner in any firm to keep up to date, right, of what makes sense and doesn't make sense. So I think by having that mode of operation internally keeps people more up to date. The other thing is just like any company, hire the best people and make sure they are part of what they do. Founders and execs and anybody, they have kind of this growth mindset. So they're not like, hey, I made it here. I don't have to learn anymore. I'm good to go. That's kind of just the wrong strategy. So we hire for that. We pick founders with that. Hopefully it reflects over the next 20 years.
Well, one of the major topics I wanted to get into today with you, Mar, is sort of the DNA of the entrepreneur. You've done a lot of good work on this and some things that have been very surprising as I've read some of your content. Let's start maybe with some of the data. I know there is data out there on entrepreneurs and some of the innate characteristics that make for tech founders. Can you cite some of that data?
Somebody asked me, I think one of our LPs, like a while back, are entrepreneurs born or made? Everybody has their first reaction to that, right? And I think most people would say, oh, they're born. These people are just born entrepreneurs. I also think the world, any question is never a 1 or a 0. There's some normal distribution and people fall into both sides, right? So there's definitely a group of people that from very early on, they show signs that they could be a great entrepreneur. It's like being a great athlete or a great musician or whatever. You have some DNA that makes you very capable of doing that. I've quoted that many folks that end up being founders start companies from day one. Like they're born and very early on, they start as kids selling something. I was actually just listening to a podcast on the founder of Walmart and Warren Buffett and other folks that a lot of them had newspaper routes. So that was the job of the founder of many years ago. But anyways, they have that spirit early on, right? There are lots of folks that don't fit that category, but can be taught to be great founders. I have this rough estimate that if you take 10 people, 2 may be amazing and naturally capable. 2, there's nothing you could do, but there's 6 that you could actually really, really help. And the first thing is to make an assessment of what that founder needs to get better at. I wouldn't have considered myself a founder before coming to the US. It just wasn't part of my culture in Spain. I came from Spain. I don't think I even heard the word entrepreneur growing up. But then I think you get dropped at Stanford and you start hearing it and you become, well, maybe I could be that. And then I think throughout my multiple entrepreneurial experiences, I've learned to be better at the things that were scary for me. So that's why I think a lot of these things can be taught.
I do have some questions about that in a bit here, but what do you think are some of the counter signals that may indicate that someone is not wired to be an entrepreneur?
I think people that are not accustomed to surviving like failure is a big sign that it's going to be hard for you to make it. It doesn't mean you'll never make it, but it's a hard sign. So if you talk to an entrepreneur, that's what I will do at the beginning. Like, tell me what you've done. Tell me about your background. What insight did you have that took you to start this company? Why start this company? Tell me about your experiences in the past. If everything has gone great in your life, I actually get very nervous because you're going to fail in a company, like 100% guarantee that there's something in your company that is not going to work. And if you're not accustomed to that, those failure points can bring the whole company down, right? So that's, I think, one thing. The second is, I think, a lot of motivation, like what it motivates somebody to be an entrepreneur. Why do this? Especially today. It wasn't the case maybe 25 years ago when being an entrepreneur was not the norm. But today it's almost part of our pop culture. There's celebrities that are entrepreneurs everywhere, on Twitter, on TV, everywhere. There are a lot of founders that just think it's cool to be a founder. You only learn it's not cool after you do your first company. There's no other way to learn. When people are doing things for the wrong reasons, it's a sign it's going to be tougher to make that company work. I think those things are reversible, by the way. People learn through their experiences in life.
Yeah.
You can be a great second-time founder, even if the first time you were off, right? For whatever reason.
We've had that discussion as a team here. Sometimes we'll meet a startup and sometimes it's not the right fit for us, or sometimes we just think the timing might be off for the founder.
Yeah.
They might not be quite ready to take on the endeavor that they've chosen.
One advice you can give founders is pick anything that you have to do today. What's hardest, go do it. The sooner you start calling customers, rather than you'll realize that that's life of the entrepreneur, a lot of rejection over and over. Dealing with that and being better at that and taking advantage of that is the job of a founder.
Yes. I had a recent dialogue with a founder where we had met and I liked the business and I liked the founder. And I asked him to record a 2-minute video so I could share, in his words, with my team, what he was working on.
Yeah.
And it didn't go over well. I got a really negative reaction to that. And I said,
oh, interesting. Good idea.
This is saving your time and my team's time, but founder didn't see it that way. And if it's that much of an issue to record a short video, then good luck with the cold calls.
Yes. It's a growth journey, right? To be a founder. There's nothing that grows your potential faster than being a founder, because you have to do everything, learn everything. And the attitude has to be about, becoming better every day and knowing that, hey, if you do 100 calls and you get one back, that's awesome. Do 200 to get 2.
Sometimes, Mar, I find that there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance. How do you parse the two?
I should tell you, I'm sure you feel the same way, that it's an art to try to figure out in a few hours whether a founder person is said to be a great founder and you can rely on them, et cetera, right? It's a tough job. Us as investors, we're only so good. And I think founders are very scripted, many of them, when they come, because there's so much information online that they're scripted. So to make our job harder. But arrogance and confidence, they come really close, and many other things in characteristics of founders. I think the best difference between confidence and arrogance is that the confidence person is aware that there may be a failure point and is at least paranoid about that, right? Is aware of their surroundings. And the arrogant is not even aware, and they treat the people around them in the same way, which makes it really, really hard. We do want founders that know where they're going, but they're also paranoid about what's around them and that they're aware that they may need to change. And I think when you're arrogant, your ego takes over you. When your ego takes over you, you cannot learn or be aware or be paranoid or anything like that. It's a way to, unless you can adjust your journey, there's no way to make it. Same for us, to your question about at the beginning, how do you make sure your platform works? Okay, if we assume, if I'm like, we'll build the best and that's it, we'll never continue to be great.
And so connecting back to your point about whether founders are born or made, you have done this startup simulation class, I think historically run at Stanford. It was fascinating for me to hear a bit about this. Can you talk about why you started it and the structure of this class?
Yeah, this class actually was started by Steve Blank about 11 years ago at Stanford, and he's kind of the father of it, and he's put it in many places. And about 7 years ago, I came into the teaching staff at Stanford, and that's been great. This fall, I actually have been helping teach it at Harvey Mudd College, which has never had such a class. So it's been amazing because I've been able to see the experiment of running that class in a different setting. Same curriculum, same process. And I'll tell you what we do is not rocket science. All the curriculum is public. People can read it. There's lots of videos. Steve has done an amazing job at sharing all of that. The idea is you come in with a class with a team and a project. At Stanford, we are very lucky to have a lot of demand for the class. So we're able to pick the teams that make it. So about 20% acceptance, which is very, very hard. And I wish everybody could take the class. So once we have those teams, they'll come in with an idea or some hypothesis. Like, I believe I can sell lead gen software to real estate brokers. And between every class, you're supposed to go out and talk to at least 10 people. So it could be, in this case, 10 brokers or 10 people in real estate, and learn and understand if your hypothesis is valid or not valid. Do people care about lead gen? What other tools are there? Would they ever pay? What is their biggest problem? And then you formulate a new hypothesis at the end of the second class. So people will intentionally go through these 10 micro pivots during the class, sometimes very big pivots, but it trains them. It trains that muscle in people's head as to how to navigate that, what I call the drunken walk, which is the initial phase of a company, which is just about getting the value prop right. That's all you have to do. And we force folks to get out of the building. That's what we say, and talk to other people, not talk to themselves. Don't do anything unless you have checked with some external data. The good news is the system works. Every year out of 8 people will get 1 to 3 projects that end up being companies, which is crazy. And what is amazing is that I've seen it firsthand now at Harvey Mudd College, and it also works there. The students have made tremendous progress in the same amount of time. Anyway, so I'm really excited.
Awesome. So one key component is you force the teams to get out of the building and go to the customer. Isn't there another where they're forced to pitch to each other routinely, very often? And
the way the class runs is a little bit like a reverse classroom. So during the week, you go and do your interviews. You may build an MVP, whatever. You're testing your hypotheses. During class, you come and you present to everybody, right? And then the teaching staff, we are a little bit like American Idol and judges, and we'll tell people everything they're doing wrong, celebrate any wins, but mostly tell them where to go next. And the great thing is that everybody in the class is listening to that. So they're learning from the other 8 teams. And sometimes, us in venture, we are learning just by being next to the founders. So these other 7 teams that are listening to a team presenting, they copy ideas, they avoid mistakes that somebody has made, etc., just by learning there. They provide feedback to each other. Again, all the people taking the class, not just the teaching staff, they teach each other.
Right. A part of this philosophy is, the founder journey is kind of isolated. And if you're born to be a founder, maybe you can persevere through some of that stuff, but actually putting people in an environment where they're just surrounded by other people that are iterating and building becomes sort of a contagion effect.
Yes. And actually, we've had many people in Lean Launchpad that are 5th-year PhDs that would have never thought they were founders, and now they're successful CEOs. And a lot of it is just being in the right environment and understanding that, I can do this. I can be good at it. And I have people that I can call and get help. So they can help any of the students taking the class, helps each other. They have a set of mentors that help them. So there's a big network. It's a really good way to simulate what happens at the very, very early stages of a company. If you're in the right environment, that's what it does.
Pretty amazing, because I've heard about many of these entrepreneurial classes, and I haven't heard one that has data connected to it and results like yours. Can you talk about the number of teams, the number of funded companies, and the number of large-scale outcomes or enterprises that have been created?
Let me just make a comment. I think most entrepreneurial classes are lecture-based. Mm-hmm. Or most, I'm saying most, or maybe they have speakers come in and so on. It's kind of like speaker series. Some of them are practical, but very few involve everybody on the process and are kind of reverse classrooms. So I think that has a lot to do with it. Probably our most successful company is Zoom, but with a U, not ZOOM, but ZUM. That's it's the transportation solution for kids and they started as a kind of Uber for kids. And now they've raised hundreds of millions of dollars, Sequoia backed, and they manage the transportation system of the major school districts in the country, San Francisco, LA, etc. So it's very successful. A female founder, which is super cool. We have companies like Blue River that was sold. This was an early company. It was sold pretty quickly for a few $100 million. We have companies like Free Will, Nova Credit, Doxel, many others that have actually raised from Index and Insight and many other successful firms. But in general, like I said, we've been doing this for 11 years. And every year, like a clock, 1 to 3 companies will be truly venture funded by top people. So I should publish the list and everybody has them.
Incredible. And I know that you also have an initiative where you've assembled high potential women that desire to be founders. That's not the same as the class. Can you tell us?
Yeah, so we run a program at Pear called Female Founder Circles. And one of the things, again, partly based on my background, I thought if we get women together, we'll give them more confidence to be great founders. And women are amazing founders, but many times we're held back. The same way it took me 4 years to start Pear. I think if you, generally speaking, an average guy may have said yes day one, but I was like, I'm not the right person. That was my first reaction. And I think women have a lot of that. So we ran an experiment about a year and a half ago. We'll select a group of women that are all high potential founders, engineers, they're PMs, they are working currently in industry and at least are interested in entrepreneurship. And we'll put a program for them where we maximize the interactions between each of them. And we put them in contacts with other role models, other female role models that they can see themselves in. So we've run 3 cohorts today. We are in the middle of the 3rd cohort. The first cohort, we had about 200 plus people apply. We picked about 30 women. We also picked another 35 women. I think we had between the first 2 cohorts around 75 women roughly. And there's been 47 companies started to date, which is crazy.
Wow.
I don't think there's anything more successful, honestly, in terms of picking people that have no companies and then have companies. And a lot of it is these women are just amazing. They're all engineers with not that many years of experience, but eager to do something. One of my favorite sessions is on public speaking. And we have a great session where we all practice how to speak in public. And it's very fun. We'll have fun events like going to get a manicure and pedicure, which is also part of the journey of getting to know people. And we have more serious things like folks coming to talk about building an organization or raising money or whatnot. I just had office hours for Female Founder Circles yesterday, and the comments from every woman that I talked to were like, thank you so much for this community. I've built so many friendships and so many people are helping me. So a lot of it is just putting it together and running it, but the value, just like the class, comes from everybody that is part of it. So the selection is actually very, very important that you have, people that are going to be add-ons to this community.
So, Mar, related to this conversation around characteristics that make for tremendous founders, we've seen these different founder mafias emerge. Notably, I think you've spoken about the PayPal mafia versus the Google, and how sort of the per capita employee company outcomes for PayPal have been more successful than other companies, in particular Google. Any thoughts or theories as to why that is?
I have a theory, but it's not proven. And I think somebody should go do it, get their PhD on testing this. My theory is that, when a company's hard, meaning that you don't find success day one, or you go through existential crises, the DNA of that company is different from the DNA of a company where everything goes right. If everything goes right, just like a founder, you're not trained for understanding what happens when things go wrong. However, if you've been part of a company that was successful but had a lot of trouble getting there, and you were part of it. So there was a culture of transparency where people were aware, were made part of the moments where it's like, hey, we have a problem, we need everybody to come in. That gives rise to higher chance of success founders. That's my theory. I could be wrong, obviously. And there's many things. It's not like, hey, you go to a failing company and that's a good thing. It has to be people that overcome that failure, right? Because not enough to fail. Is how do you overcome that failure? What do you learn? What are the next steps? That's what makes you a great founder, not just failing all the time.
Interesting. So 2-part follow-up on that. Will you look for founders of companies that have come from certain places that you think has a culture that makes for sort of the right characteristics? And the second part of the question is, when you're looking at a founder's background and they come from a place that maybe is not known for building an entrepreneurial mindset, will that change the way that you evaluate the opportunity?
It's not so much where they come from. I think getting to know a founder is so individual. It's like a set of individual experiences. Sometimes we have founders that have gone to war and come back. That's maybe you haven't been in a company, but boy, you have a certain experience that is really hard to replicate. So we really try to spend a lot of time trying to know where the founder comes from and where experiences that they have in childhood, last company, even your last business. You may have had some sort of foundings experience within some company that you were just an employee of. That is what we look for, not necessarily whether they were in this company or that company. That was more of a observation rather than a way that Pear filters people.
I guess from personal experience, there's one large company in the Midwest that was built a certain way. And every time I meet a former employee that's starting a business from that company, they're kind of using similar principles, which is...
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
But I would bet there's probably somebody in that great company that is great.
Yes.
So that you have to spend the time trying to figure out who is this person, et cetera. And that's, I think what the pandemic made that process for Pear really hard, because you really need to meet people and get to know them. And I feel like in the pandemic, it was this kind of really Zoom, quick transaction, no time to meet people.
Mar, how would you describe your style as an investor or a board member, post-investment?
I'm a very analytical person. I believe numbers don't lie. So words can't lie. So I try to infuse in my founders assess kind of operational excellence from day one. I think for us, any seed company that we back, it's my job to make sure they get to Series A. So that's my responsibility, and I really want all our companies to make it. So when I invest in a company, the first thing I will do is, okay, let's agree on the targets. Where are we going? Let's build a plan to get there. And some people may think that's overkill because they say, oh, I'm a seed company, I shouldn't have a plan. I'm like, no, everything should have a plan. And even if the plan is, I want to hire 2 people, it's like, okay, how are you going to hire 2 people? And let's measure that we're making success on hiring those 2 people, right? Or whatever it is. So I'm a very data-driven person, and that allows me to look at a company maybe 6 months after we invest and say, it's working or it's not working. And if it's not working, what do we do? And how do we change? I think that's part of the value that us that have been around for a long time can provide our companies, right? You can warn them. And it's hard for me to do warning if there wasn't tracking or an operating plan that we were driving towards. So that's my style. And I think it's something that folks at Pear are trained on. It's not for everybody, but for the people that want to be success metric driven, this is the right way to do it.
Mar, Doug Leone of Sequoia has said that this downturn is worse than 2000 and 2008. Do you agree or disagree?
I'm not an economist, but I do think we are through a process of adjustment, and there will be an adjustment. So a lot of folks raised money in 2020 and 2021 at super high valuations, and they were yet not proven companies, right? It's not the founder's fault. It's also the investor's fault, right? For setting those prices and believing everything. Companies that are good companies, so that have positive unit economics and that can grow in a scalable way, will be able to get funded. And I think that's what I'm trying to tell all my seed companies. You need to prove that you can make money by the time you get to Series A. You don't have to reach 2 million in ARR or 1 million. There's no absolutes, but you need to show that you've built a machine for growth and that with the right amount of money, it can grow. I think if companies get there, they will be able to raise money. It won't be at the valuation that we had in 2021, right? So, and it's unclear if that will last 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. My advice to founders is assume that the bar for fundraising is what it should be, which is you need to have a scalable business model and positive unit economics. I'm trying to drill that down in everybody. If you do that, you will raise money. And if the downturn lasts a short time, your valuation will be higher. If it lasts a long time, it will be lower. It's whatever the market prices you at. But at least you will be able to raise money, which is important.
Will you advise them to sacrifice growth in order to get that system and the unit economics structured correctly?
Yes, always. I don't blog a lot, but the only piece I've put out is basically what makes a good seed company and how to raise a Series A. I think I put it out on 2018 or 17. I don't know. Yes, absolutely. 100%. Companies that grow, but have fake growth, meaning that their margins are negative or the net LTV to CAC is crap or whatever. Those companies may be able to raise money in 2021. But even if those companies raise money, eventually they crash because you're going to go public and people want to know that you do make money. I think the gray area for us in venture and what defines a downturn versus a bubble is that a founder can come and say, hey, I don't have positive unit economics yet, but I'm growing very fast. And everything is going great. So I will be able to reach positive unit economics at some point. In an upturn, people are like, great, you're growing so fast. Doesn't matter that you have unit economics that don't make any sense. We trust you, Mr. Founder or Mrs. Founder. You'll make it. In a downturn, it's like, I'm not sure I'm willing to take that huge risk if you haven't proven it yet. Even, we backed DoorDash, even DoorDash in their Series A, it's very clear that they had their first region was working. The retention was high, unit economics were great. It wasn't working. And, it was all fake growth. So my point is like the fake companies, they can raise money in a downturn, but even those, they never go public. It's hard.
It's early on now, but do you have a sense for some data around Series A's, percent that valuations have come down, the time it takes to close a Series A, any firm data around it?
For the top 5 to 10% of companies, raising a Series A today is as easy as it was in 2021. If you're a top 5 to 10% company, they're all getting multiple term sheets and they close. The valuations have come down. There were some crazy valuations, people with zero revenue at 100 million plus valuation. Those are no longer happening, or I haven't seen them. So they're come down, I would say anywhere from 50 to 80 is reasonable, maybe even 40 on the Series A. There's a big chunk of companies that are okay, but not the top decile. And those companies are taking longer to fundraise and their bar is higher than it was. So you may have wanted to see $1 million in ARR and now some people are like, actually, I want you to be at 250K MRR, which is a big difference, right? In terms of how you should run your company. Or I want to see more proof that you may have been able to raise a Series A with just founder sales. But they may want to see that you can actually hire a salesperson and make them productive. So you know how your sales machine works. Again, if you're in the top decile, nothing changes. If you're in that bucket, I think there's more demands for you to cross that line of closing a Series A. And the bad companies, I would say they're not raising money. So that is new because during the pandemic, everybody was raising money. I just remember telling my team, assume there are no bad companies. Anybody that walks through this door can walk out and raise money.
If you had to guess, how much do you think graduation rates will drop? Because I think we reached all-time highs, like 70, 80%, but historically it's been 30, 40?
I believe it's going to revert to the mean, perhaps a little higher because there's more money in the system and it takes a while to get the money out of the system. But companies don't change. Humans don't change. Starting a company is hard. Downturn, upturn, money, not money. It's all about selling something to somebody. I believe the basics of building companies remain the same no matter what. And that's why I think we'll go to what used to be the median or mean, especially also with, I think a lot of the money in venture has been driven because LPs have put a lot of money, right? We raised, even this year, there's been 150 billion raised by venture funds. And when we started Pear, there were 22 billion raised in that year by venture funds. So that's a 7.5x or something for amount of money put into the system. If the returns are not there, LPs will put their money back, right? And there'll be less money in the system. So it takes a while, though, to do that because our FMBs have to get adjusted, and FMBs have not been adjusted across the industry. So it's going to take a little while.
Mar, if we could feature anyone here on the show, who do you think we should interview and what topic would you like to hear them speak about?
I think you should feature my partner, Pejman, who has the most incredible story in the world. He came to this country from Iran without even speaking English and started in a yogurt shop, in a car wash, selling rugs, and ended up in the Midas list.
Wow. Incredible. Mar, do you have any habits, tactics, or techniques that are a secret weapon?
Yes. One thing that I think really, really works for me, maybe it helps somebody that is listening. I wake up very early every day, 4:30, sometimes 4 a.m., and my coffee, and I will work for 2 hours. These are the most productive 2 hours that I have in the day. I try to reserve the hardest things to do for those 2 hours. Whatever requires my thinking, whether it's reading a board deck and trying to come up with advice or whatever needs real deep thinking, I will do it at those 2 hours. And then I will exercise for an hour, which consists of me going running. And most of the times with nothing but my thoughts. And it's an hour of meditation. So that's my advice. It makes me feel really good by the time I come to the office. I feel like I'm ready to go.
Wonderful. And then finally here, Mar, what's the best way for listeners to connect with you and follow along with Pear?
Pear is all over social media. You can reach me at mar@pear.vc. I don't have a strong social media presence, but I do live by my email. So feel free to reach out. Somebody will answer that email.
Well, Mar, thank you so much for the time today, and thanks for what you do to help create founders and amplify them onto great success.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right, that'll wrap up today's interview. If you enjoyed the episode or a previous one, let the guest know about it. Share your thoughts on social or shoot them an email. Let them know what particularly resonated with you. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that some of the smartest folks in venture are willing to take the time and share their insights with us. If you feel the same, a compliment goes a long way. Okay, that's a wrap for today. Until next time, remember to over-prepare, choose carefully, and invest confidently. Thanks so much for listening.